This is Rosemary. I'm Shalom Girl on some social platforms. I just got off the phone with my friend Renee. We did an interview. We were trying to do an interview over the phone, long distance, and she was driving, and I was taping on a cassette recorder. I'm just waiting for something to rewind, and then I'll play it for you. And if the sound's hard of hearing, I'm sorry. God bless you in Jesus' name. If you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, repent and believe the gospel of Christ. That's all this is about. It's taking as many souls to heaven as we can. Amen. All right. Here we go. I hope it works out. Today is July 11th, I think, 2025. Oh, what a terrible mess. All right, I'm recording. Okay. All right, do you remember where we left off? Can we start over? Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. I just can't imagine we'd ever recapture the magic. That was amazing. Oh, it was good, huh? Okay, yeah. I can actually go off my notes from last time. Okay, great. Yeah, that'll work well. We should say a prayer. Ready? Yes. Dear Jesus, thank you for dying on the cross for us 2,000 years ago. Thank you for saving us with your precious blood on Calvary. God, I ask you to cover all that we do in your Holy Spirit. I don't want to go in my own strength, and I know my friend doesn't either. I ask that your Holy Spirit would fill me. Even though I am a sinner, I'm sorry, God. Please forgive me. And I pray that I could go with God. I could give my testimony for Jesus Christ. Please help me not cuss God or flesh. Help me be in the Spirit and give Renee wisdom, knowledge, and discernment to lead and guide and ask the right questions. And thank you, God, in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Great, thank you. Right. That's there. Okay. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and the background? A little biography. Okay. I'm 60 years old and my name is Rosemary. My middle name is Leroyce. I'll tell you that. Apparently it's very important that I tell you that because it's also an ancient heritage family name, Leroyce. And I didn't know that. I took it out. I'm 60 years old. I was born in San Francisco, California, USA. And May Haldeman Musk in 1965, June 11th, 1965, was at Kaiser Hospital in San Francisco, California, dressed as a candy striper. And she called herself Light, and she drugged my mother and told my mother to name me Rosemary. And that was a few years before Rosemary's Baby, 3 years before Rosemary's Baby, which is a psyop. Which is a psyop, yeah. Oh my gosh, I did not realize, I don't know if I knew the candy striper thing. That's just, wow. Remember those? I said, Mom, why did you obey her? Absolutely. My mom said, I was so high, I don't know what happened all of a sudden. And she said, and I thought she was a candy striper. And again, just like I said, she was just trying to please them, and I was just trying to please people too. Right. Yeah. But they've got this whole environment and go through the boy, they just arrange things, don't they? Oh, it's amazing. Okay. They do. So,
you want to go back a little bit and tell us about how your family came to be in San Francisco?
Okay. I'm going to put the phone in a cup and hope it'll make it a little louder.
Okay. And you were born in San Francisco, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Excuse me. My grandfather was born in 1919 in Kentucky. His family is the Scottish Rites. Our family gathering in 1940 in Kentucky was a Scottish Rites clan gathering. Looking at my grandfather's records, I found that our family's on a ship coming over from, was it Scotland? Or Wales? I think it was Scotland. And in the descendant, the bloodline of Hugh the Great. And in that bloodline, I see that someone in Scotland was married to a fairy princess, a fairy. I forget her name. I think that was in one of Fritz Springmeier's books. I don't have the 13 alarm. It was in one of Fritz's books. Somebody sent me one page of it. But, so my grandfather was an experiment, born and bred, but he did not comply with his handlers. And in 1940, he did not join the Scottish Rites. He went to San Francisco to jump on a ship and go kick Hitler's ass. But it looks like he took a little detour and was tending bar in Monterey, California during who's that author? I really like him. He wrote Old Man in the Sea and Steinbeck. Yeah. And so Little Fish. So my grandfather, he looks like he dodged the draft for a minute, but then he finally got aboard. And when he came back, he was stationed in Texas. And by the time my mother is 3 years old, they are at Lockland Air Force Base, which later changed its name prior it was Bexar Air Force Base. A lot of MK Ultras, LSD, CIA, weird experiments going on with Jolly West. Meanwhile, my grandfather was a record keeper, and on his wedding picture, when they got married in South Carolina, on the newspaper, it said that my grandfather was a record keeper at the military base. Well, that answered the question. One of my viewers actually stopped me up and sent me that information. It scared the hell out of me. Hi, Debbie. I hung up the phone and stopped talking to her for a year, and I'm sorry. And she was only trying to help me, but it scared the hell out of me. She stopped with every family on Penny Lane and went all back through history. And she had my grandfather, but it let me know that he was a record keeper in Texas. I've been asking my God in prayer, how did my grandfather how in the world did he know who Dr. Joshua Norman Haldeman was when he spotted him across the street? How did he know and get up and go kick his ass? And that was the journey that I went on to find out, how did my grandfather spot him so readily? He was, an average guy to me. If you saw Hitler, you might recognize him if he was dressed up as Hitler. But, let's see, my grandfather was a record keeper at the military base. My mother and 3 of her sisters were born there. And by the time my mother's 3 years old, one of her sisters is born a boy, but then later is a girl, as a child. And it's a transgender, the child, or I don't know, but she was born with a boy's name, and I thought, well, why would they give a girl a boy's name? Okay, and then, that military base was doing those things. So I can't say for sure. She has children. I don't know. And I don't know, but I never saw her pregnant. I don't know. But, maybe it was just an error, a record-keeping error on the census records. But these strange things do pop up. So my mother is 3 years old on a military base. Well, I was reading, I think I had Googled MK Ultra, and the military base came up, and it listed an address on the base where a 3-year-old little girl was raped to death in a CIA LSD experiment. And I was so pissed off. And I Googled, okay, so that happened on the military base, right? Well, I have my mother's and grandfather's census record, and it was missing half the document. It was folded. It's a long document, like 17-inch document, but they only took the top portion. But then one day I was looking, and I saw the other half of it, and I Googled that address that it gave for my mother's address when she was 3, and it was the same year the child was raped to death on LSD, the same address. Now, it gave my mother's same address. I'm sorry. When I Googled my mother's address off the census, it gave the military base the same address where the little girl was raped to death. So it says a different name for that girl. How terrible to think that my 3-year-old little mother's little 3-year-old friend was raped to death. And by the way, all those children were the same age because everybody got into the base. But yet there were 1,600 Nazi scientists roaming around Texas, and I don't know whose children these are, looking back, because I found some strange things. So my mother was 3 years old on a base where another little girl was raped to death at the same time, same age. So that started me down a hole of covering my mouth and trying not to throw up, realizing what my mother had been exposed to say the least. But she looks about 10 years old. She's in San Francisco. But I have other records of her at some of these CIA experimentation bases in New Mexico and also in Arizona. So, but she's 10 years old. It looks like she's about 10 years old in San Francisco. And then she was in the same schools as I was, and the same daycare as I was in the Presidio, where we find Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, who's the head of the Temple of Set, and Anton LaVey was doing his satanic church. Excuse me, I said that wrong. My grandfather was a record keeper there. I was in daycare there. By the time my mother came there, she was in the elementary school, not the daycare. But I was in the daycare. Church in San Francisco at that time. And this all came when I asked God, please show me how my mother became a split personality. Because my grandfather was a good, kind person, and I never saw him once raise his voice or be out of character, except for the day in 1978 when he kicked Dr. Joshua Haldeman's ass. And just to clarify, Dr. Haldeman is Elon's grandfather? Elon Musk's grandfather, and this was at least 4 years after Haldeman faked his death. And my grandfather kicked his ass on Penny Lane in Napa, California, and said, what, faked your death like Hitler? Get your hands off her, you no good, dirty, commie bastard. And my grandfather kicked his ass and asked me what I was doing working for technocrats. And I said, what's that? And Grandpa said, they're Nazis, Mary. They're Nazis. And I said, well, I don't work for the Nazis, Grandpa. I work for the Mansons. And my poor grandfather looked at me so shocked, so confused, so horrified. It was horrible. And the MK Ultra connection is made there. Yeah, I was absolutely up in the agencies and the elites following those bloodlines, even, not just
through America, but in Canada and Spain and Scotland, and just they do that. They follow who they think could be useful for their purposes, and they do follow programs like that, and do the NK Ultra stuff. And so your father, or your grandfather, he was the record keeper. He was privy to the Operation Paperclip.
Yes, my grandfather was a record keeper, as the newspaper in South Carolina said. So that was good information, and that also lets me know. I think my grandfather was nobody important in the real world. He was a mild-mannered Kentucky boy, but I believe the newspaper in South Carolina honored him because he'd been slipping secret information to let America know that we were, in fact, harboring Nazis in America, giving them lands and deeds and titles, new names, putting them in charge of universities, colleges, veterans hospital, and giving them their own buildings. Dr. Haldeman, Elon's grandfather. Sorry, my friend is calling. Can I answer real quick? And I don't know how to split a call, so never mind. I'll just hang up. I would like to split a call. She's very knowledgeable. She used to work for some authors, and she's an elderly lady. And she used to work for some people in the New Age. So, let's see. So what was he talking about? Haldeman.
Well, for those that don't know, Operation Paperclip is where, after World War II, the American government, instead of prosecuting these Nazi scientists that have done these horrible experiments, they said, well, we'll tell you what, we'll just erase clear the slate, and if you come work for us and train us how to do these horrible experiments on our people.
Right. Right. And so now 1977, well, let me back up. My birth. So my mother was an experiment on the base, basically. And then later, when she turned 18, after graduation, she was invited to a Halloween party, as were all the blonde, blue-eyed virgins and the girls, the graduation class. And they were invited to a Halloween party where 7 brothers from Spain with the last name Aragon. My father is 7th son of a 7th son, and that's a magical thing in Illuminati speak. Magical with animals, music, powers, healing. My father, Emmanuel Aragon, drugged and raped my mother, and on Halloween night at a place called The Egg, the town is called Devil's Slide, and the place is called The Egg, and it's noted as a military bunker, but it looks more like a spaceship crashed into the side of the cliff. It really does. When I was a little girl, I heard my grandfather telling his daughters that was here when we got here, and we tried to cover it up. I don't know what that means. That was here when we got here, and I remember that because we would go up there because there was a ranch we would go up, and my grandfather would caretake a ranch, and I really loved going up there to that ranch over the ocean, and running around in the woods. So let's see, I was an experiment. So, yeah, go ahead.
So at this
I'm going to get a drink of water while you talk, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you go ahead. If I remember correctly, at this Halloween party, this group of girls that were 18-year-old virgins were also the same girls that were from Lackland Air Force Base, and they had
which was also called Bexar. It's in Bexar County, Texas. And again, when I was Googling about a CIA experiment that killed a 3-year-old little girl on acid, and it was about an experiment about implanting false memories. They set someone up for something that didn't do it. But when I Googled the address of that address, it was the same address as my mother's census records. So it's horrifying.
The powers that be had kind of bounced all of them around and had them convene at the same time in California, a graduating class together, oddly enough, so that there could be this party so that they could breed children for their next phase of whatever they had planned. And your mother was one of those girls. And I'll just keep talking. From what I remember of your story, after the rapes and the impregnations, I guess is that the word, and the girls being impregnated, the rapists had the nerve to go back and have DNA testing to make sure that the babies were theirs. Is that correct?
Sorry.
That's okay.
So you explained about my mother's military class?
I explained that those girls at this Halloween party were the same girls that were like bounced around convened from Lackland Air Force Base.
Yes.
And they grew up and graduated together, virgins, to be able to be impregnated by these rapists at this party.
Yes.
At this Halloween ritual.
SRA, yes. And I was to be a moon child.
Okay, and then the rapists had the nerve to come back after the girls were impregnated and demand DNA testing so that they would know that the children were actually theirs.
Yes, they actually came back and did a mock court trial and did blood tests, and I'm the lottery winner for the seventh son of the seventh son.
Wow. Okay.
But yet the story is that my mother was a little whore who got pregnant and had an illegitimate child. So now she's estranged from her family, who's embarrassed of the bastard child. And these Illuminatis from Spain, the Aragons, they had a castle, like Neymas. They have a castle in Pacifica, California, complete with griffins and mermen and gargoyles and pyramids, obelisks, crystal balls, scary organ in the hallway. And my grandmother's cover story was that she was a housekeeper, just like I was a babysitter. She was a housekeeper. But that's just the lie to go there. And she would take me there when I was a little girl, and they would take blood out of my neck. Well, I passed out. And I passed out at school a couple of times in first and second grade. I passed out. I passed out on the playground. I passed out walking home from school a couple times. My grandmother said I embarrassed her. And she was ashamed of me. But I look back now and think, dear God, they were taking blood out of me. And I asked, my grandma would pick me up from school. Sometimes just take me out of school, but I remember the castle. But they were poking my arm. And I was fixated on looking at my little arm, trying to wiggle away from that needle. And I remember talking to my grandma once, saying, Grandma, what happened? They were poking me. What happened? What happened? And she was smug, having a cigarette. And she just said it all smug. She said, they took blood right out of your neck. But she said said, it's so weird. So weird. And she waved her cigarette around with her eyes, rolling a little bit. She's so smug. And then my mother burst through the door and said, Mama, what the fuck? You took Mary to the same castle you took me to? Oh, I must back up. I'm sorry. When my mother was pregnant, the castle touted itself as a home for wayward girls, a Catholic adoption agency, and they went around and knocked on the doors and talked the military families out of their pregnant daughters. And their daughters were dumped off and locked in the castle, locked. And my mother jumped the wall, climbed down, tied sheets together. She said all the girls helped her, but they were too afraid to come with her. It was a long drop. I went and made a video of it. But then my poor mother, trying to run away from the castle, and she said, fuck them, Mary. Fuck them. They wanted my baby. Fuck those people. And my poor mother, running away from them, ran into the arms of, there's a medical clinic in San Francisco. It's a drug clinic. It's touted as a VD clinic, but that's a lie. They do human experimentation there. They did things to me. They killed my brother. But my poor mother ran there for help. And Roger Smith and Carol, his wife, she thought they were her friends. And I've asked her so many times, who is this Roger on my birth certificate? Why is he as my father? And she said, oh, Mary, I was so confused, and I didn't want to put the rapist down. And she said, but Roger and Carol, they were my friends. I went and stayed with them. And they live at the Frederick. There's a building, it's a beautiful building in San Francisco called the Frederick, and it's on Frederick Street. And that's Roger Smith. I heard Joe Rogan talking about him when he was talking about Charlie Manson, and my head whipped around, and I said, I know where he lives, because that was my house, and it's on my birth certificate. And Joe Rogan said that Roger Smith was a CIA agent and also Charlie Manson's parole officer as a cover, and he would be at the parole office was near the drug clinic, so all these CIA guys had an excuse to drug everybody and tell them what to do, because they were doing suggestibility experiments, as with Charlie Manson. But Charlie Manson, so Roger wanted to adopt me, and my mother ran away from him. And then 3 years later, Roger Smith tried to adopt Charlie Manson's little boy. So this story just gets weirder and weirder. Thank God I hated my mother for years. And I'm so thankful. She ran away. She fought.
She could.
She did. She fought.
And that's the way these people, they do. They'll make a scary situation, and then they'll have you run right into the arms of another landlord.
Yeah, they'll be your hero.
They'll be your hero. They set it up.
Mae Musk was always my hero until she wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Renee.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're doing great.
Thank you. You are too.
Thanks.
Are you sure you want to keep that job of yours?
What's that?
Are you sure you want to keep that job of yours?
Keep that what?
I was saying, are you sure you want to keep your job?
My job?
I was joking, because you're so good at this. I'm not joking about that. You are.
No, I love doing this with you. This is amazing.
Can I please? And if you say no, I won't.
No,
can I use this tape? Yeah, that's what I meant. Can I use this tape? Can I put this on live tonight?
Sure.
Thank you, Renee. Is it okay I said your first name?
Yeah, that's just fine.
I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with me, okay?
Of course,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I gave up on you and you didn't give up on me. Thanks.
Okay, I get it. I do.
I was just scared. I didn't know who to trust. I have a beautiful friend named Lori. I won't say her last name. She paints beautiful pictures, and I blocked her. I got scared for a minute because she was getting too close, and I was a little gun shy. And she's a beautiful person, but she kept asking about one of my daughters, and the only one of my daughters that gave me permission to talk about her on YouTube was Sierra. So I just got a little scared. I got to tell her I'm sorry. And anyway.
And it's okay. And I understand this because just like your mom was frightened all the time and would run into the arms of another person that was there.
Right. Jim Neighbors, Gomer Pyle, Bill Cosby. Always some new handler that you couldn't refuse, you know.
Right. So, of course, this has been going on in your life as well.
Yes.
So everybody, you've lived a life full of trauma and generations of trauma throughout your family. And so, of course, you're going to get spooked and question everything, and probably that's healthy. So I don't think that that's...
I wish I'd done it sooner, but with the wrong people instead of the right people. But I'm trying. Yeah.
You don't know until you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. So you've got royal bloodline. I think that's.
Oh yeah.
Like your mother's mother. It seems like she was bloodline too, wasn't she?
Yeah, there's something up with my grandmother. I can't tell you her name just yet, but it's the most French name you've ever heard.
Okay. We won't let that go, but just suffice it to say, you're targeted beside her.
Yes, and I think, well, my grandmother was targeted because on her deathbed, she told me her people made her marry my grandfather, that she loved another, and they dressed her up and took her to the Scottish Rites clan gathering, and she was to target my grandfather. I love my grandfather. My grandmother, everybody thought I was her favorite when really she was just off taking blood out of my neck for a bunch of vampires. But my grandmother said she loved another and she was told to marry my grandfather, whatever that means. And yes. So
we got to your birth, and May must pops in and dressed as a candy striper. Your mom's
candy. My mother said she thought she was a candy striper. But my mother was high as a kite. And this was when it was time to name the baby before you leave. They were doing the paperwork. May Musk came in with the paperwork to name the baby. Or my mother was holding it, but my mother, she said she had never even thought about naming the baby. I said, and I thought, what a terrible person. But I'm sorry. I misjudged her. And it doesn't make her a bad mom. And she said, and here they are telling her my name is to be Rosemary Leroyce Aragon. But when she got to the Aragon part, she couldn't do it. She could, so thank God she couldn't do it.
And that's what she used the name of Charlie Manson's parole officer.
She used his first name on my birth certificate and his address, but she gave him her maiden name and me her maiden name.
Okay.
And I said, Mom, why does he have that? And she said, I was so embarrassed. I was just confused. I didn't want them to think I was a whore. So I made it like we were married and he was off with the military or something. But it was, she always said Roger and Carol Smith and the address at the Frederick. And it's a beautiful building. Yeah.
And this is back in the 60s when, just unwed mothers didn't get a fair shake, even if it was not their fault to be pregnant in the first place. It just was she was going to,
They were really grooming her to become a madam with her split personalities.
And she did, didn't she?
She did. They were grooming her with the you're a whore, you're a whore, you're a whore.
Oh.
You're known as a whore now. And now, just like May did to me, when she would mock God, when I would come over in 1978, 79, 80, and she would say, Mary, where you been? You know, and I'd say, oh, I've been to church, got baptized, I went to communion. And then she'd say, oh, you drink blood, you're a vampire now, you've done cannibalism. And, you know, they mocked God, and I felt like I didn't defend God good enough. And I remember she said, God doesn't want you, you know, and he is a thief. And she just made me feel like so terrible that I can't go back. Or even after I went out and sinned, or, you know, because they raped me. I don't want to talk about that for a minute. Let me think about this. Gonna forward it. I'm not ready to talk about everything. Like even the act of rape, like you did that, you know. So I've done such unspeakable things. We're made of the same skin, lady. Yeah. She told me, Musk told me, she showed me the tablets of Thoth. She told me that Moses stole the Ten Commandments, that they weren't even his idea. I mean, she would blow my effing mind. I couldn't wrap my head around the shit she was saying. Just a girl. I didn't have deep theology. But I knew it made my skin crawl. I just always felt so dirty after a while. But then I wanted to please her. Like, you know when things don't go right, so you try to go back and make it go right, but it never does. You can never fix that shitty conversation or whatever just happened. It was always like that. Like I could never just come back with the right comeback for light, because she was just so much. She was intelligent and beautiful and smart and strong and diabolical. The crazy bitch. I called it Light's Badass Bitch Army on Penny Lane. And somebody's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, we're just packing some TVs and cigarettes for Charlie, right? You know, and Light's Badass Bitch Army, you know. And they killed my boyfriend, and they mocked God, and you know, if you don't obey them, things go bad.
Yes. So let's see. You tell us about how you became part of Elon's world. Okay. So, as I recall, your mother was now Madam, the head Madam of San Francisco.
Yes.
And your aunts were, I guess, involved as well. Your aunts, maybe.
Well, I called them. You know, I call when you go to Hawaii, the children call everybody auntie and uncle. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay.
And so I have real aunts in the game that were born in Texas, that were in this, that are CIA, that are Illuminati. I have real aunts that are Luciferians and Satanists, but I also have hooker aunties that are no blood relation. So I have
family by proximity.
yeah, guilty by proxy. Yeah. So let's see.
Just family by proximity.
So let's see where we to. Oh, so around the time I turned 13 in San Francisco, the movie Pretty Baby came out with Brooke Shields. She plays a 12-year-old girl in the 1900s in a whorehouse in Louisiana being auctioned off. Oh, excuse me, I have a big dog giving me a hug. Hold on. Hi, buddy. Hi, you want to go outside? Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's go outside. Everybody go outside. Outside! Doggy. Can you get your dogs? Can you get the dogs just in case? I let them out because they were jumping on me. All right, so let's see.
So wait, to set the scene, can I mention that
Please.
you're living with hookers, and all the clothes that you have, your 12 with 13, and these the handbells. So like you're dressed just in whatever fabrics and not. This is just normal for you, right?
Right. But, I was trying to rise to the occasion. Um, I wanted to go to the Hooker's Ball. It's weird. I wanted to. I thought it would be fun. It was a costume party. And I was dressed as I Dream a Genie. And I was, oh, wait, I got to back up. So Pretty Baby came out, and my mother took me to the movie with my sister and our friends. Gee, that's weird. What was that? So I was barely 13, and my little sister was probably 11. And then all our friends, right? Yeah, family night with mom. So, and some of the girls, which are, the hookers in the crew, and they were when I say putting a bug in her ear, I mean they were grooming my mother with ideas and thoughts, suggestibility. Somebody's drugged up, and you start suggesting things, and maybe some of the girls were CIA too, right?
Or could be. And did use your mother in the CIA experiments where the hookers would seduce men and slip their medals to you, correct?
Yes, she was loving the blackmail espionage aspect of it, and we're talking about the men at Union Square in San Francisco. We're talking about the biggest attorneys on the West Coast. We're talking about the owners of J.C. Penney, Sears. Yeah, we're talking about planes, trains, and automobile travel. We're talking about the air traffic control and people flying in for horse races, and so it's quite an event. You have a crew of people coming in. There's a big horse race. They're placing bets. They need girls. It's a big thing. There's creepy Arabs, and there's elites in ties and suits. There's a lot of different things going on, but you got to keep the party going. Keep the champagne flowing.
Like this thing, and she was clearly understood that, she's been given a rule, she's mind control, she's split personality, and this is the assignment she's been given, and you really can't, it ain't really much room to refuse.
Right. Right, it's an offer you can't refuse, like Anton LaVey.
Right. Okay, so you watch the trailer movie, and then the hands moves in the room or whatever. Put the bug in your hands in the air. They're pain. The girls are getting to be of age.
Oh, yeah. So we went to see Pretty Baby at the movies, one of those beautiful movie theaters in San Francisco with gorgeous seats and velvet curtains and a lot of carved wood. So we saw Pretty Baby. My mom was doing a lot of coke with her friends. And I remember they were telling my mom that the Hooker's Ball was coming up and she should do that with the girls. Mary's getting old enough now. And the next thing I know, I was dressed as I Dream a Genie, going to the Hooker's Ball with the CIA in a Cadillac. It's customary to go in a Cadillac. Although we had all the kinds of sports cars you could ever dream of, Jaguars, all kinds of cars. We always had a brand new sports car. Literally, we would wear out a sports car in 4 months. Literally. A $65,000 car. Just no oil, no water. Literally. And it didn't matter because the Nazis got diamonds forever.
Wow.
And Tom, I love Tom. I always tell you, I love him like a drunk uncle. I'm here to tell his story. He was a CIA who fell ass backwards into it because his parents were Nazis. Thomas Richardson left me an enormous inheritance. He owns one of the largest buildings in San Francisco, for starters. And he left me a large inheritance. And when I went to collect from the attorney's office at Union Square, They knew exactly who I was. I didn't have to ask. They knew who I was. They knew what I was inquiring about. And they tried to tell me they gave it to charity, which is bullshit. You can't give millions of dollars to charity if it's in somebody's name. You have to hold on to that. But whatever. I just wanted to fuck, excuse my language, I just wanted to fuck with them. Let them know, hey, assholes, I remember who you are. And I called their office and they called me back and said, Mary, because they called me Mary, because I've known my way to that building since I was 4 or 5 years old. Shields and Yarnell used to perform in front of that building. Do you remember them?
Who?
Shields and Yarnell, pantomimes.
Don't know. Sounds familiar.
They were, clown face pantomimes, and they used to perform in San Francisco, and they were, everybody loved them. They're street mimes. But they would perform down in front of Union Square, which has a statue of Diana and Artemis. And Kathy O'Brien does talk about Presidio. Well, you see Lincoln Highway and Lincoln Park, they're right there. My mother used to tell me, don't play in when we would ride our bicycles, there's water. She'd say, no, they dumped a body in there, don't play in there, because we would go down catch a park. Or whoever the hell that was, who cut me on my private parts as a child, performing. Mary, what do you need? Can I give you a house? What do you want? And I said, I just want to see you in heaven, Tom. And he said, Mary, I'm a Catholic. I think that meant he thought he was good because he gave billions of dollars to the Catholic Church. But they're all in it. The Catholic Church is the same as the Nazis, the same as the CIA. They're all the same. It's ISIS. It's sun worship, right? It's all sun worship, right?
Yes. It's all connected.
It is, yeah.
So you got Mr. Tom took you to the hooker's hall, and they had been talking about having you sold as a virgin, right? Like pretty baby.
Yes.
And somebody had said,
Oh, I think that tip's over. Give me a second until it comes back on.
that's probably good. I shouldn't really have used that sound there.
I mean, it came out horrible yesterday when I tried, but at least it's catching some of our voices.
Is it back? Are we back on?
Okay. I hope you can hear me all right. I have a fan going in the room because it's so hot.
I hear you.
Okay.
Do you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was some concern about selling you one of your aunties said, wait a minute, that might not be safe because what if she gets bought by someone that's going to brutalize her or cut her up, right?
Yeah, she said.
Serial killers in the area?
Yeah, there were a lot of serial killers roaming around San Francisco. I think one of them is my biological father, but that's another rabbit hole with a lot of evidence. My father is 6'7", and he's kind of a blonde, red-haired Spaniard, very white Spaniard. So he passes for a white man. But anyway, okay, so the hooker's ball, let's see. Somebody was worried that I'd get chopped up. But so I started to get a little afraid as the day dawned on. But when we went, I was paired with the fire chief, or at least I thought he was the fire chief. A lot of these people, I only know them by their nicknames. I don't know their real names until I see them in the news and recognize them.
Yeah. I've heard that from other people too, the same kind of a thing.
Yeah, I knew who Bill Cosby was because who doesn't know who Bill Cosby is? But, and Gomer Pyle, of course we knew Gomer Pyle. And my mother was also married for a while to the Playboy Mansion's cartoonist's son. So I was in line for the Playboy Mansion cartoon millions. Um, there's a lot of money floating around. I never ever worried about the future, even though there was never toilet paper in the bathroom. You know, I never got new clothes unless they were hookers' hand-me-downs. It was just a really strange subculture, a Nazi rock star subculture, because, I grew up going to those concerts in San Francisco with the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Starship. So very weird. I was passed around so that I knew the hippie culture in San Francisco. I knew Janis Joplin recorded in our living room. I had aunties that had houses where the Grateful Dead, um, Jefferson Starship, Janis Joplin, the Allman Brothers, those people came to, when they got off the airplane, they'd come over to my Aunt Josie's house, which is the house in the movie. I saw the house in a music video. There's a song called What's Going On, sung by a woman, and she's in the living room. She's in my Aunt Josie's living room. That is the living room that I learned how to play guitar, sitar, and a dulcimer, and some other strange instruments. I played some Indian instruments. She had lots of instruments, but I was never able to find those instruments in life, just the guitar and piano. I don't really play piano well, but Aunt Josie, you know the movie School of Rock?
Yes.
Well, that's a true story, only it's backwards. There wasn't a house full of children. Jack Black is in the same living room, and he's a known Satanist. He's in the same living room where I learned how to play, me and Bobby McGee, after Janice died. And they were taking bets because they brought me into the living room. There were numerous rooms in that house. It was full of instruments. And they brought me into the living room, and it was it was a 3-story house, this huge, gorgeous house facing San Francisco. And they took bets on, they said, Mary, pick out your favorite song, and then we'll teach you how to play it. And I went through the album, the old record collection, and I was just a little girl, maybe 7 years old. But I'd been there since I was 3, or maybe 2. I was the only child allowed there. No other children. My sister, my brother were not allowed there. No other children were allowed there. Maybe they just do it one child at a time. Do you know what I mean? And I picked out me and Bobby McGee, and it was after Janice had died. And those people were roaming around, but the only one I had most of the contact with was my Aunt Josie. It was her house. But I do remember, Greg, who's the Allman brother that's an albino? One of them's an albino, and he was on acid, and he came over to me, and I was a little girl, and I was watching Laugh-In. And I like Goldie Hawn and Lily Tomlin, I was a little girl. And he came over and he looked at me and he was playing with my eyelashes and my eyebrows. And he said, look at her, she's beautiful. She's just like me. And he's an albino. I was a real white-haired little child. And his brother came up and said, stop it, leave her alone, let the kid watch TV. But I remembered that because he was touching me. Normally nobody did touch me. Nobody touched me there. I liked going there. I was allowed to roam the streets. I could go as far as I wanted, and I always came back. But there was rock stars there, but I didn't know they were rock stars. So to me, I'm a little kid. I know everybody in the record albums. The bookshelf, I know people in the books. And then you watch a movie like The Birds, Alfred Hitchcock, and it's in San Francisco. And pretty soon I just and I just started thinking, well, everything's about this city. This city's the whole world, you know. I know everybody in this city because I did. I knew the big attorneys. I knew all the taxi drivers. I knew all the bartenders at the strip bar by 7. You know, I was raised on Shirley Temples and strip bars and gay bars. Carol Doda became a national icon, which is weird. Topless dancing became legal in San Francisco, and we all danced. Everybody went outside and danced in the streets. And when the gay parade, I was at the first gay parade. I was there. I was throwing confetti out the window. I was having champagne and champagne glasses, just like everybody else. It's just a little girl in kindergarten or something, maybe 4, but I was in the Presidio daycare. So, I mean, I see people on the newspaper, I see people on the TV, I'm like, I know them. I see people, Wayne, what's his name? Yeah, Wayne, yes! Oh, he's a mean one. Wayne Newton, I just saw he's playing somewhere, Taro or something. That's my cousin's uncle, or father, and he was a very abusive. He beat my Aunt Patty until she had a retarded baby. And you know, and my cousin didn't want me to talk about this. She's not my blood cousin, but Amber, sorry, I got to tell the truth. And she said, well, I asked my dad, and he said they're not the Illuminati. And I said, of course he did. That abusive bastard who beat your mother pregnant until you're born deaf and speech impediment. And I just said, I'm sorry, baby, but I'm going to tell the truth. I'm not going to say your real name, but Wayne Newton, yeah. And so people like that, they were just commonplace. You know, those cop shows in the 70s and 60s. Streets of San Francisco is also familiar. Although I don't know Michael Douglas. I don't remember him. He never came into the bar. Yes, at the Hooker's Ball, Jerry Brown and Linda Ronstadt is Rockstar Girlfriend.
You found a picture, like a poster, advertising it from like a vintage poster.
I found a vintage poster, yes. And I've made postcards and reproduced it.
Wow, I think that's really validation, you know, if anybody wants to check that out. It's findable. All of this is findable.
It's all findable, and I may be off a year or 2 out of the dates, but because I'm going off of what songs were playing on the radio, what was on the newspaper headlines. That's how I remember where I was. Like I remember I was light was coming and going. And she was getting back from a trip the day John Lennon was killed at the John Lennon. Oh, what's the hotel called? Dakota. The building, the Dakota building, where John Lennon was supposedly killed. That's where Rosemary's Baby was filmed. And I'm Rosemary, and they wanted to have the Antichrist. They're bringing the Antichrist. I'm Rosemary. They filmed Rosemary's Baby at the Dakota building, but that day, you guys, so I'm going to hit pause. Let's see. One cassette tape is 45 minutes on each side. So we're on the second side. I'm obviously starting to glitch out. Been talking about this too much and it just fall apart. Obviously, I can't go 45 minutes, past 45 minutes. I think that's my breaking point. I will work on condensing my testimony. Not going down rabbit holes, but staying on the surface for you. Or at least if I drew out a rabbit hole chart of the dark web, if I drew it out, maybe I could just highlight the rabbit hole I choose to go down. Yeah, anyway, let's see what I say. I'm sounding pretty bad, though. I'm glitching out. Stitch has a glitch. But they announced that John Lennon was killed. Light got back late, and I wanted to go tell her, did you hear John Lennon got killed? And they were traveling, And my aunt said, leave her alone. Don't bug Light. And I wanted to go tell Light, because I wasn't allowed to bring a TV to Light's house, Mima's, but I was allowed to bring record albums. So I raised Elon, or whatever that was, for a few years together on on Beatles records. But Beatles is them, it's them hiding their false religion in plain sight. The Beatles are named after the Egyptian scarab. It's all about the resurrection. It's just, and remember that Beatles album where they're eating babies? Yeah, they told us. They told us. And we didn't listen, and we just played Penny Lane, right? Right? And Penny Lane, I asked God, why did they name it Penny Lane? And God impressed upon my heart when Jesus said, whose face is on a penny? And the crowd said, Caesar's. And Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And so that says to me that Penny Lane signifies a modern day highway to hell.
Okay.
It's their language, it's their symbolism, and it will be their downfall. I'm remembering everything, and God's helping me make sense. And one of the names of the Holy Spirit is Reminder. He is the reminder.
Ever since you'll bring all things to your remembrance.
Thank you, God, yes.
Okay, so at the Hooker's Ball, you end up being auctioned off, correct?
Correct, I did not get auctioned off at Hooker's Ball.
Although that was the plan.
That was the plan. I was with the fire chief, and somehow I got the idea to pull the smoke alarm. We were going down the hallway, like the red carpet, and I pulled the smoke alarm. I have done that before, and I noticed the whole world stops when you pull that smoke alarm. So that became my backup, and I'm glad nobody thought to disarm the smoke alarms that night. And you know what? Some historian tried to argue with me that there was no Hooker's Ball at the Civic Auditorium, and that they were all at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. And I said, I've been to the ones at the Cow Palace, but this was a different one. This was at the Civic Auditorium. So there has to be a permit, and there has to be a record of the fire. There has to be a record, right?
Of the fire alarm going off.
Yes, and I was with the fire chief, so that just seemed perfect. So I got out of it, we all had to leave, and then I became the joke among, the Cinderella of the hookers. They'd say, remember that time Mary wrecked the Hooker's Ball? And I'd say, shut up, you guys, and I'd be doing whatever I was doing, but I remember they'd laugh at me, and it was a joke that I was like the Cinderella that screwed up the Hooker's Ball for everybody.
Got out of being sold.
I got out of that. I didn't want to get cut up and put in a barrel and thrown in a creek like some of my other aunties.
So who came to your rescue so that you would not have to endure that and that?
I just pulled the smoke alarm and we all had to go outside, and we eventually found each other.
And then, but so that you never had to go down that road.
Never did. I'm mixing it now. It's a happy little ending. That was around Halloween, and that was around Halloween, and after Christmas, you take your vacations, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. Somehow I ended up moving to my aunt's on Penny Lane, and then she arranged with another woman who is the head mother of the Santeria. That's the devil's. That's the mess. It's the Spanish devil worshippers, as I was told. But I was told, asked if I would watch somebody's kid, a special boy coming from Africa. And I said, okay. And I thought I was going to watch all the kids, because I usually had to watch I would watch everybody's children. And I play guitar and they all listen to me. But then it turned out to be just one boy, not everybody's kids. And I thought it was going to be a black retarded kid because he was coming from Africa and he was special. And I think around that time we started calling retarded children special.
Yeah, the semantics always change.
Yes.
And then the old semantic is offensive. So,
Yeah.
but that, in the day, that was what it was said.
But when he came, it was a big deal, and they came from Africa, and they rented a house, I thought, across the street, but really it was all planned. That street was laid when she was born for her. Literally, I looked it up. That street was laid like a month before she was born, and I think it was all in the plan. They named it Penny Lane. When did they? And now even Lucian Graves, he's got some chorus girl on there called Penny Lane. I'm like, oh dear God. She just appears as his right-hand man out of nowhere. I'm like, I told you. I told you. Right? What's even weirder is that there's a little girl in a band that I liked. I lived on a street called River Road in Eugene, Oregon. And there was a band that I really liked that played a song called River Road. And there's a little girl playing accordion in the video, and her name is Penny Lane. And I thought, oh dear God, is that the same girl? I don't know. I don't know, because we all just thought it was a happy song, but really it's hiding in plain sight for the Illuminati and the pharaohs.
Yeah. Interesting. Things come full circle, and coincidences are never actually coincidences.
Right. None of this is a coincidence anymore.
So, you were going to be the babysitter for this child that was coming from Africa. And Light, they must have you call her Light, correct?
Could you say that again, please? I heard the last part.
Yeah, you were going to babysit this child that was coming from Africa, which is Iran, and May Musk, his mother, had you call her Light.
Yes, I was not supposed to know her real name. And Elon Musk's name was El Elyon. And I couldn't, when she told me that meant God, call him God, I couldn't do it. But I got used to it later, but I knew he wasn't God. And Light, I wasn't supposed to know her real name, but my aunt, my mother's sister, showed me the Helter Skelter book that Light was in. And her name was May Haldeman Musk.
Right. And apparently that edition has been scrubbed, or we can't find.
Yes.
I know there were 2 publications of that book. I mean, there were two publishers. So there are 2 first editions from different publishers. But the ones we've been able to find thus far don't have that picture in it.
Oh, and another thing, my sister's a crackhead who lives in a tool shed, and she's worth millions. But my sister remembered something, and as soon as she said it, I covered my mouth. I felt sick. It was buried in me. I knew it, but I just hadn't spoken it. And it was so familiar. She said, Mary, remember when Light switched places with Patty Van Dyne?
With who?
Patty? Somebody in the book, Patty. One of the times that I was supposed to come, because I didn't always live on Penny Lane. I would go back and live in other places, and then they'd call me to come down. Sometimes on vacations, so it didn't mess up my school. They wanted all things to keep going smoothly. But one of the times I came down, I guess May Musk. So May would go to prison to take Charlie Manson, van loads of TVs, and cartons of cigarettes. She wanted me to do it too. I asked our other auntie, Imelda, why is Light taking van loads of TVs to Charlie? And Imelda said she's buying future chaos. She's creating prisoner armies. She's creating race riots. And they wanted me to go do that too. Well, I kept fucking it up. I didn't want to be caught red-handed holding a machine gun like Patty Hearst. And I saw what they did to Patty, and I knew Patty, but that's another thing. And God bless you, Patty Hearst. And I prayed for you, and I cried. I cried when they arrested you.
And meanwhile, White is looking like a philanthropist, bringing all these televisions into the jails, I suppose, the prisons.
Right.
I would imagine.
Yeah, can you see Mace Haldeman driving downloads of TVs to Charlie Manson? She's a badass bitch for sure. So, but it's undeniable. The first time that I saw Elon on the screen, and then I looked up his mother, and I went, oh yeah, that's her. And then I looked up his father. Okay, am I imagining this? It couldn't be the same people. It couldn't be, but it is. It is the same people. And that's their name, Musk. Although I didn't call him Elon Musk. He was Elon, and it was later Elon. But it's them. And I knew, and his father's name was Errol. So it's them, the right people. I'm not calling out the wrong people. Oh, and when my grandfather, I don't know if I said this or not, but well, one day, I think the first time I watched Elon, or at least it was the day that she was bringing her dad. Her dad faked his death in 1974, and my experience with them doesn't restart until 1978. But my grandfather spotted them across the street, came across the street, kicked his ass. I called them technocrats. So that's also another part of the story. It's very verifiable. I told the world in 2018, Elon Musk's grandfather was arrested and kicked out of Canada for being a technocrat. Plotting to take over the world by force with robots. In 1919, that was his public tweet.
And Gonza Shimano, is that how you say his name?
Gonzo Shimura at Face Like the Sun. Hi, Basil. Don't trust Flippy.
He did a very good cover on this whole subject.
Yes, he did. He did a wonderful job translating it. I'm sorry, unfortunately, when it got to the part about Elon levitating, I couldn't speak about it, and my hand just got too shaky. I couldn't finish writing it. What happened after we got up, we started floating. I couldn't speak of it then.
It's okay. It's been a process. You're coming out and speaking at all.
Yeah.
And that was terrifying. That you realized, I think, that this is the time, and this is the time that your told would come, and the Lord has to sign up, and it's...
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't something that came charging out of the background wanting to say. It's been a process of building up to the idea of sharing, all these things.
And well, I've hidden the shadows. I've written letters, and I wanted to see how people would respond. I didn't want people, I don't want my kids to disown me telling this story. It's embarrassing. It's confusing. It's humiliating. It's degrading. It makes me look like a schizophrenic, and I'm not. It makes me look bipolar. I'm not making this shit up. And you can check my facts back to 2018 when I started saying Elon Musk will present the mark of the beast. I said it, right? And he's presented the Neuralink. It's not like I could just go around and say that about anybody. He's the only one I'm here to tell you about. So I'm sorry if I get distracted. I do.
You're okay. And then, of course, a lot of people are naysayers. You've got the trolls that maybe know that you might be telling the truth but don't want it out there.
Very ignorant.
What's that?
They're ignorant.
Yeah, they just don't know. And well, some people might know and just don't want you telling secrets. Don't want you telling stuff that they don't want to
Oh,
say.
that's true.
And then you've got other people that just can't fathom what?
Yeah, one person today in the comments said, well, why doesn't she just give us her full name and address so we can look her up and see if she's credible? You know what? I'm a mess. I'm a hippie in the woods with messy hair, but I'm telling you the truth. And who else could have pulled all this information out of their hat in 2000? 17, 18, right? Nobody told you Elon's grandfather was a technocrat kicked out of Canada but me. Now it's common knowledge.
Yeah.
I just
don't want a crowd of people showing up at your door.
Right. I don't want the story to be twisted. I don't want it to be changed. I'm sorry I added my own influctuation. Bottom line is, all that matters is that Jesus, when I was told when you see Elon Musk hit the stage, time's up. The Antichrist will step forward. So we're there. Are we there yet? Because Elon is definitely on the stage.
That's right. And it was and now the mother of the Santeria that told you that in the trance, right?
Yes.
She was channeling the spirit or something, and
yes.
You had asked her, is Elon, is he the Antichrist? Right?
Yes. And she was in a trance, and her eyes would roll in her head, and she would gurgle a little bit. And now I know she's like the Witch of Endor. Yes, she told me Elon Musk will present. I said, is Elon the Antichrist? And she said, no, but he will present the mark of the beast. And when you see him do that, the Antichrist will step forward and take the stage. And she also told me we're buying future chaos, creating prisoner armies. Those are the armies you gotta watch out for. Yesterday, I got surrounded by Mexican gang. And oh my life. I don't want to talk about that gang right now, but let's see. Hold on, I gotta get the right button. Let's see.
There's a spirit that's running the world. There's a spirit that's running you, and the enemy is not wanting to, but this is yet. So
I'm so sorry I don't respond in the spirit. I'm sorry, what?
What I was doing is the things on the spiritual level too. Our enemies are not carnal.
It's true, and I hate it when I respond in the flesh instead of in the spirit. I mean, I responded like the crudest gangster bitch right back at her. I let her know I wasn't afraid of her, but I was.
Everyone different from other children with disorders.
Okay, in 1978 or 1979, he was as tiny as my 2-year-old cousin. I know how big an 8 or 9-year-old would be. He was not the normal size of an 8 or 9-year-old. He grew at an excruciating rate. He talked about odd things. He was a genius. When he was barely up to my belly button, he was beating everybody at chess. Well, I didn't want to play chess with him. And the only one that was ever allowed working. All right.
You know what? I have to call my work.
All right. Sure. I'm cooking to death without that fan on. It's about 85 in here. Yeah. Call me back in a couple minutes, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go outside and cool off. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Go.
All right. I'm gonna look for my headphones. So I've got you on speakerphone right now, and I don't know which will be better.
It sounds good.
Okay, I could just leave it like this then. Okay. So where were we? I don't remember. Oh, so you met Elon, and you were told to call him Elyon, and because that means God, and you said, well, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, actually, those are two different times. The first time I met him was at my aunt's house on Penny Lane, and then the time that she told me to call him God, because that was really strange. She didn't tell me his name. So I just called him honey or sweetie or kiddo.
Okay.
So the first time I met him, we just played. But that's the time his eyes turned black. There's something wrong.
I thought it was the first time. Okay.
The first time I met him, and he was down in the sunlight in the windowsill, and I had other cousins, and they would eat the dead bugs if there was a window. So I'd get down there and make sure they didn't, if you had a dead mosquito hawk in the windowsill, and he was pointing at something, and I got down on my knees to see what he's pointing at, and that's when something creeped me out up close to him. His eyes were dilated in a way they shouldn't be in the broad daylight like that. We weren't outside, but we were at the windowsill. But yeah, and then the first time she left me alone with him is when she told me to call him El Elyon. When I said, "Lady, what's your kid's name? You're leaving. I don't even know when you're going to be back. You got somebody to bring me cigarettes and peanut butter sandwiches. I don't know when you're going to be back. What's his kid's name?" I think I panicked and I just said it. And she said, "It's El Elyon." She couldn't call him God. Oh, it means God. So that was very mind-fucking. That was very personality-splitting shit there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were just, how old? 13?
About.
Okay. And supposedly Elon was how old?
Supposedly he was 8 or 9, but he was tiny as a 2-year-old, tiny as a 1-year-old. He's tiny. And that's why I asked later, when I saw Imelda again later, I said, is he his grandfather's? I said, is he the Antichrist? And she said all that, no, but he'll present the mark. But then I said, is he one of his grandfather's experiments, creations? I've never said those words out loud. Those weren't words in my regular vocabulary. And I may have been uneducated, but I wasn't stupid.
Right. So you were aware that his grandpa or his grandfather was creating experiments.
Yes, in the lab across the street, in the giant net house.
In the insane asylum, in the psychiatric hospital, correct?
Yes, in the giant net house. And he also would take off with the head psychiatrist who lived next door to us as well. It was all planned. The head psychiatrist for the biggest nut house in the state of California, the main one. His name was Dr. Stevens, and he had 3 children. And his wife had requested that I come stay with them as well. I played guitar. I guess I calmed her down. She liked me playing guitar.
Who liked it? His wife, right?
The wife of the head net house. And she told me that, I said, well, are they going to be gone? And they said, no, she'll be there. And I said, well, why do you need me there? And they said, oh, she's on crazy pills. And this is the first time in my life I ever heard about a crazy pills. And so as I got to know her, I found out that her parents were very wealthy. They were from Europe. They were killed in a tragic accident just after she turned 18, of course. I think they have some weird law with consent. And she, her family psychiatrist wine-dined 69'd her, as they say, and married her, brought her to America, became the head shrink for California, and then had her declared mentally insane, took her inheritance, and got custody of the children. So even if she did get away, she'd be broke and childless and declared nuts. But you know what? She's a really nice lady. And I never saw her do nothing out of character except for what seems totally in character now that we look back, because I was babysitting her kids one day, and she got a hold of the car keys and drove through the garage door and ran over the gate and drove away, and the kids cried, "Take me, Mommy, take me." And so I ran over to Lights and asked Light, "Should I call the cops, Light?" And she said, no, I will handle this. There must be no police." And I remember thinking, oh, you're so nice. Thanks, Light. But no, they just didn't want any cops, right? No police still. Although they had all the cops under their phone. Because they didn't want record. We might get an accidental honest God. Light's back door, her back fence out of her little backyard, goes straight through a wicket gate. Wicket. Oh, hold on, I'm sorry, my dog is barking at somebody. She's not my dog. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's okay, I think. Like a whistle. Not a whistle, I was just going to say. Oh, so let's see, I forgot what I was saying. I forgot what I was saying. You let the hostage escape. I let the hostage escape. And, so let's see. Oh, I forgot to share with you that I let Elon flood the bathroom. And so weird things would happen where I would screw up. But it helped me remember because it kind of broke the spell that I was under. When my grandfather kicked his grandfather's ass, that broke a spell for me. I remember it because it shook up the norm, And when Elon, and that same day that my grandpa kicked his grandpa's ass, when they came into the house, I was just telling you about the back porch. Light's back door led through a little gate in her backyard to the Black Cat Vineyard. I'm going to say I would assume Colonel Aquino, Temple of Set, they worship the cat. The vineyard is surrounded by gorgeous wrought iron fencing. Nobody's getting in there, they don't want in there. But she's got a little cute little gate right out her back door. She's got a private entrance through the groves. And they worship the groves, Wow. And that Fritz Springmeier, 13 Illuminati Bloodlines book, I Googled, or I search engined Napa Valley in there, and it came up 40 times. And the same years that I talk about being sent when I wouldn't go to the prisons, when I would go to the country clubs and the vineyards, they would send me to be a raspberry delivery girl, and I knew all the chefs. They were just grooming me to make deliveries because I was also muling gold and diamonds out of the Veterans Hospital. So I might lose you. I'm going through the mountains. I'm so sorry. If that happens, I'll call you right back. Okay. Should I let you go, or do you have a long drive right an hour, right? I heard about 40 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I am starting to lose you a little bit. But just keep talking. It's more important that you talk. Just keep talking. I think you did so great last night. I wish I had your recording. Let's see. So Light has direct access to the Black Cat Vineyard. And Fritz Springmeier says in his book that those vineyards that I was muling out of, being groomed to deliver supplies, were all muling cocaine for the CIA, and that they were actually owned by Anton LaVey because he was getting a lot of flack in San Francisco as the Satanic Temple. So he left and went to Napa Valley, and he was there the years I'm describing. Wow. Yeah, and I look back and I don't have any memories of Anton in my presence, but I do remember my aunt Lonnie Dawn Bocelli being commissioned to paint Anton LaVey's portrait. And she told my mother, and I love to go see Lonnie Dawn, and she said, Claire, guess who came in the shop and wants me to paint his portrait? And my mom said, I don't know, who, Lonnie? My mom called her Lottie. Who, Lottie? And she said, Anton LaVey. And the air stopped, and my mom said, are you going to do it? And Lonnie said, it's an offer I can't refuse. And we all laughed, kind of nervous, but I knew what that meant. So, Anton got his lion from somewhere. My mother was a pet store, and she was handling the strange pets for the leftover Hollywood stars. They're like their boa constrictors, and Stevie Nicks likes her parrot. But Anton had a lion, and I don't remember. I just remember my mom telling me to stay the hell away from him. Don't go by his house. She'd give us kids $5 to go get a candy bar or something, and we would ride our bikes around the other side of the neighborhood to not go past his house. So she did put a fear in us about it. But yet, little did she know that we were all in on it. I mean,
You're already owned. You're already slaves to the system.
yeah, I suspect she sold him the lion because I would go with my mother down, I'd have to look at the map of California, but I would go with my mother to these warehouses where exotic animals were sold. And there would be giant warehouses of anything you wanted, monkeys and when I babysat Elon, or whatever you want to call it, I was being groomed to be his wife. But when I did that, we had a monkey, the same kind of monkey that he loves, those capuchin monkeys. Yeah, the same, and I suspect it was all part of the plan because I had my monkey from UC Davis, and he was doing some of his experiments on the Neuralink there on the monkeys as well. Looking back, I wonder if we had a freaking brain chip and a monkey looking at us, filming us the whole time. I don't know. Right? We had monkeys, parrots, horses, snakes, alligators, all of that. Specialty pets. Yeah.
Okay, are you ready to talk about the portal?
Oh, okay. All right, we're going to talk about the portal. Do you want to cue the question, or do you want me to just talk?
Well, you had said in one of your when you first started talking about this, you said that you were Elon's babysitter or his nanny when he was very small, and he did something dark that you had never spoken of, and you didn't explain it right away. You were hesitant to bring it up, but now you have since gone ahead and explained what happened. Why don't you tell us what happened that day?
Okay, I was alone with him in the house. There was a boy named Joaquin, Imelda's son. He would come and go. He watched me. He always kept an eye on me. I think he's El Chapo. They called him El Chapo. I think he's the same El Chapo. Of course, none of the narratives line up on Wiki. But he was Light's right-hand man. He was a drug mule for San Quentin prison and other prisons. His father was a heroin drug lord, but his mother was Imelda, the mother of the Santeria. So I don't know what their real stories are, if they just put him in that home. I don't know, but he would bring me what I needed if I needed something. Oops. Hello.
Hey.
Hi. Yeah, I just dropped a call.
Yeah, sorry about that. It was me going through the mountains. Okay, I should be good from here on out. Sorry.
All right, great. All right, let's see. Well, I was alone with him that day, or at that time, and he went into his mother's room. And I used to care for some children. Parents are drug lords, and so I don't go in the parents' room, stay out of the parents' room. But he went in there, and he got in his mother's trunk, and I always called it her African trunk because she's from Africa, where they said. And he was getting something, and he was acting so excited, so excited. He was running, and he looked just like his little mini-me in the White House. And he was running back and forth. Um, he was definitely not an 8 or 9 year old. Absolutely not an 8 or 9 year old. I don't think the numbers law are telling the truth. But he went and got some little, like, figurines. They look like ancient Stonehenge, little Easter Island kind of gods, I guess is what I'd call them. Um, but he went and got these little statues, whatever they were. Light had lots of ancient artifacts. And he set them up in a certain way on his bed. And he called me. He said, Moon, come play with my friends. And I did not want to go in there. I did not want to go into his room. It was terrifying in there for some reason. It was just dark. I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of the dark. I used to, when I first moved here 10 years ago, without even the moon being out, I would take a 2 mile walk in the forest on a jeep. sorry, you guys. I fell asleep. Let's put this other tape on. I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Here we go. Sorry, you guys. How long was I asleep? Here we go. ABC of our interview. Second cassette, first side. And Renee was asking me about the portal. I was just saying that Elon had gone into his mother's room and got into her trunk and gotten out these figurines, these little statues, and he set them up in a certain way on his bed, and he called me Moon, come play with my friends, and boy, he looked just, oh yeah?
He looked what?
He looked just like his son X.
Oh, okay.
Wait, there's a child X and now he's named Twitter X, right?
Yeah, and there's the Osiris X thing, you know?
Wow.
X can stand for Osiris.
Yes.
Yeah, the Masonic thing.
Yeah. I've chosen to stay uneducated about all this all my life. I ran like crazy away. So forgive me for being ignorant. I was in the middle of it, but I didn't want to know a damn thing about it. I didn't want to go to hell for it. I sure didn't want to die for it. Doggy, go away. Go lick your butt somewhere else. Go, go, go. Oh, hold on. I got a big happy dog licking his butt. I gotta make him go. Come on. Come on. Come on. Get out of here. Come on. Sorry. So, and I said I wouldn't cuss. So Elon, something was happening in his room. There was like an atmospheric pressure change, and there was like wind and energy and stuff. And I peeked in his room, and there were sparks. There was like a whole atmosphere going on above his bed. I didn't have the language to describe it, but I guess now I would call it a portal, a stargate of some sorts. And he was being lifted, and he was smiling, and he was jumping up and down. He was so excited. And his arms were he had his hands were clenched, and he was being lifted. And my aunt, my real aunt, had said, "Don't you let nothing happen to that effing little Elyon." And the way that she said it, which I wouldn't anyway, but I said, "Why?" And she said, "Don't you know nothing? They're the Illuminati. That kid's going to rule the world someday." And I didn't know what the Illuminati was, but she always reiterated it that it was the Bilderbergers, Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds.
Okay.
And they do whatever the hell they want. She always said they do whatever the hell they want. So I reached in and I grabbed his arm, which I've had my arm yanked out of socket a few times, and I certainly am very sensitive to others about that. But I grabbed his arm, and I got sucked in too. And I was afraid to look, but we got sucked in, and there were these giant, there was no bottom. It was dark, but it was golden glowing, and there was no bottom, and there were these 4 giant creatures in there, and they weren't scary like little demon dudes. They were glorious, very glorious to behold, and they moved in a different time. I remember thinking they were something like Egyptian.
Did you say they had different kinds of heads?
Yes, it was like a bird, a dog, a cat, but a man body. But there was gold accents, and when that happened, I couldn't talk. I was like how I'm having trouble talking now, but I couldn't talk. It was like one of those paralysis dreams. And I remember thinking, "Don't look at their eyes, or they'll have you." And I cried out to Jesus. I said, "Jesus, save me!" And it stopped, and we rolled back, and we came flying out of it, We rolled out of his room, and we were on the floor like we're looking at a bug on the carpet. And he said, Moon, why you not like my friends? So, dear God, there's all that, right? That's why I let him just go play and run water. Oh, I was saying that. He flooded the carpet. So weird things would happen, like never let a kid flood the house before. He flooded the carpet, let the hostage get away. My grandpa kicked his grandpa's ass. When things like that would happen, it would kind of jolt me back into reality. I think they were hypnotizing me and drugging me the whole time. I got to where I wouldn't drink or eat anything over there.
Oh, okay. Now, these beings that you found on the other side of the portal, how large were they?
They were huge in comparison to today's 2025. But a few years ago, just a few years ago, like last summer or two, I found the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark with Harrison Ford, and I'd never seen it. I guess I'd seen parts of it, but I'd never been to the movies. I'd never watched the whole thing, you know. And but this time I watched it as an adult who is an educated biblical eschatologist. I love eschatology. It's a study of end times in the Bible. And so there's a lot about Revelation 10. A star falls. It's given the name Apollo. It touches down. He's given the keys to the abyss. He opens the abyss and lets out his four fallen angel friends. And the number of their army is 200 million. Well, there were four somethings down there. Sorry, the dogs are barking. An adult who is an educated biblical eschatologist. I love eschatology. It's a study of end times in the Bible. Right. And so there's a lot about Revelation 10. A star falls. It's given the name Apollo. It touches down. He's given the keys to the abyss. He opens the abyss and lets out his four fallen angel friends, and the number of their army is 200 million. Well, there were four somethings down there. I believe they could be fallen angels. They were not ugly. They were terrifying because they were glorious, but they reminded me of that movie Harrison Ford was in with the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I put it on, and it was on my big giant TV somebody gave me. I put it in a VCR, and he was down the well of souls, and he climbs up the leg of Anubis, I think it is, and it's a map to the stars down there. But I think what they're calling the stars, see, in the Bible, the stars are angels.
Right.
And in the Bible, they're held into place until God sends them to do something. If they fall down to earth, it's because they're in rebellion. They lust after women. They come down here. It says in Genesis 6. But I remember when Harrison Ford climbed up, I think, Anubis' leg, I remember thinking, that's the thing that grabbed me by the throat.
Wow.
And then I started paying more attention to Harrison Ford in that movie. And then I realized, so I do not identify with any other flat earthers, okay? But when I read Genesis in Hebrew, it painted a 3D picture in my mind of the four corners, the abyss, the firmament, God's footstool, the angels, a firm foundation, all these things. So in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, Harrison Ford, he basically, in the movie, his girlfriend there, she was 16. She says I was a child.
Right.
He said, you knew what you were doing. Okay, Harrison Ford is an unholy man. And in the movie, he has hands-on free reign to that Ark of the Covenant. But we know, biblically, God would never allow an adulterous, sinful man to put his hands on that ark. But the Nazis were looking for that ark. And I started to realize I wonder, so, I wonder if Dr. Haldeman gave us this story and they put a hot guy to play the lead and we cheered. I wonder if we're watching some of their adventures glorified through Steven Spielberg.
There are some parallels there, aren't there?
Yes, and I've seen Harrison Ford doing time travel experiments, and, Hollywood was doing experiments. Light, Mae Musk, she had these ancient tablets, and my aunt would tell me to keep it clean over there, don't be a effing slob. And Mae's house was clean. I mean, I never cleaned anything over there except for my dishes. But she had these tablets on a stand. Some were clay, some were metal. And I remember I asked her, what you doing, Light? Because I sent over there. I got to go over there and make conversation. I always fill the emptiness with stupid chatter. And she said, translating the tablets. Deciphering. And so when she left me alone with Elon that day, I polished those things because they were dirty. The metal one had black stuff on it that I thought was carbon. And I polished it. I threw the rag under the sink. And later when she came back, she said, what you do? What happened? And I said, I was polishing your old junk, Light. And she gave me a look, like only she could. And she said, the cloth? And I said, I threw it under the sink. I'll go get it, Light. And when I went to go get that cloth, it was floating. I wasn't high. It was floating. I'm like, okay, it's floating. Magician's apprentice, Mickey Mouse. So I go to grab it, and it moves. It avoids me. Like two magnets that are opposites.
Yeah.
And I lunged at it, I jumped out, I grabbed it, and I gave it to her. I go, here you go, Light. So now, as a grown-up, I think, it's kind of like Aladdin's magic carpet,
Yeah, it was charged with some spiritual power.
It was. Yeah. So, she had a map to the stars. So I was watching something, I guess some Nazi stuff, Annie Jacobson talking about Hitler faking his death. And then, in my grandfather's words, when he told him his ass, he said, like Hitler, you faked your death, And so I was pondering these things in my heart. And I'd seen Joe Rogan talking about some of that. Not that we trust him, but Annie Jacobson's quite an interesting character. Thank you for her fine documentation. And what was I going to say? Oh, and a documentary came on about some Mormons who went to Argentina to make some videos of Father Crespi's ancient treasures that he says that the natives brought him out of a secret cave. Well, then some part of the documentary went into how Father Crespi was actually Hitler, Adolf Hitler.
Right.
Father Crespi spoke fluent Italian, as did Hitler's mother, and Father Crespi appears with papers from the Pope giving him a mission. But before that, there's really no documentation of him. The Catholics and Hitler, they're all in on it. So my grandfather said Hitler faked his death. Now this documentary comes on. These Mormons film Crespi taking out... Oh, and by the way, when I said I lived on a military base when I was a little girl?
Yes.
We lived on Crespi Street.
Oh.
So I think they were hiding the truth in plain sight.
Okay.
Father Crespi. So the military has one street named after that. Okay, that makes sense. And then the documentary went into how Father Crespi was really Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And that in 1974, or was it 1974 or 78, But that Father Crispy, so Father Crispy had these metal tablets, gold, I don't know what they were, brass, bronze, but he was showing them in the video, and when I looked up, because I wasn't paying attention, I was cleaning the house, and I looked up and I went, I've seen those. Light has those. Light and her dad. And it was then I started paying attention.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, those are Hitler's. And it all just turned into a big spy game.
That's wild. And they were known, May and her dad were known to go hunting for archaeological treasures.
Right! That's what Gonzo showed, and that just confirms what I said and what I always knew. And that they were coming. So basically, his dad had all these treasures that he stole from around the world. And then Light and her dad go in there and steal a bunch of his treasures. And then Father Crispy's reported that his place burned down, but somebody robbed the place and then set a fire. And so a lot of the treasure was stolen.
Wow. Okay, one quick thing I want to mention. I want to hit on. I have to go. I'm at work.
Okay.
But let's remember to say something about. They had wanted you to go on one of those adventures, didn't they?
Yes, they wanted me to go to Africa. And if you have to go, I understand. So Light wanted me to go to Africa. She got my passport, showed me my name was Rosemary and not Mary. She said I had a different last name before, and now, and I was supposed to go to Africa, but I was afraid. Because when I snuck off to church, they showed us a missionary movie of some Africans were throwing missionaries at the crocodiles from a bridge. And I was like, dear God, I'm never going to Africa. Right? So that was perfect timing. Dear God, why would you show that? They were just
Because of your Aragon blood, right?
Right.
I think
Yes. So she wanted me to go to Africa, and then we were supposed to look for some treasure in the Kalahari Desert. We were supposed to look for a sunken Spanish ship, an Aragon ship.
I'm at work.
Oh.
Let's pick this up later, okay?
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, that ship was found, and 2,000 golden doubloons were recovered from Catherine of Aragon's family, royal bloodline. I suspect they were going to use my blood to call up the resting souls. Good night, you guys.